so sorry.
Hello and welcome back to It'sJustAwesome.com's 31 Days of Horror Part 4. We're reviewing a few of each decade's horror films to enhance your knowledge of horror cinema history. The 1970s continued the trend of more realism in horror films, but toned down the sensationalism. Many of the decade's scary movies were quite simply lean and mean, with almost a documentary-like feel to them. But this is all with the notable exception of Italy's Giallo films, which really hit their stride during this period. They were usually ridiculously gory, but they had an undeniably unique visual style, including bold color palettes. And while these films, as well as Hitchcock's Psycho in 1960, may have arguably birthed the slasher genre, it's 1978's Halloween that really perfected it, laying out the ground rules which most slasher films have adhered to ever since, for better or worse. Michael Myers wasn't some supernatural creature, at least not until the inferior sequels. He was the kind of villain that could be lurking in your very neighborhood at any given moment, and there was next to nothing you could do to stop him. Halloween is also noteworthy because it was one of the first films to use a Steadicam, which could put you, the audience, directly into the killer's head. Its opening scene remains one of the best shot sequences of all time, and not just in horror movies, but in all of cinema. Director John Carpenter and cinematographer Dean Cundey radically changed the game here. And of course, who can forget the film's iconic music, which Carpenter wrote himself. But supernatural horror movies, especially those with a religious theme, still thrived in the 1970s, and in fact, the decade gave us some of the best examples, including films like The Omen and The Exorcist, which is often called the scariest film ever made. It has certainly stood the test of time, holding up quite well even 40 years after its release. The same is true for Jaws, and although IMDb doesn't classify it as a horror, it feels sacrilegious not to at least mention it. The mechanical shark that Spielberg nicknamed Bruce is as iconic a horror movie villain as they come.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
For this year's edition of 31 Days of Horror, our selections from the 1970s are Whoever Slew Auntie Roo, Deep Red, from director Dario Argento, whose movies have often been associated with the Giallo film style, and Ridley Scott's Alien. So be sure to check out those reviews on It'sJustAwesome.com, where you'll also find the entire 31 Days of Horror list so you can follow along with us each night in October. That is, if you're not too scared.